Imagine a world where Albert Einstein was not the only genius in his family. Imagine that somewhere, hidden deep within the classified vaults of history, there existed a brother, a brilliant mind whose discoveries could have changed the course of science forever. A man so extraordinary, so dangerous in his knowledge, that powerful nations conspired to erase him from the narrative of time. Could it be possible that the story of Albert Einstein we know today is incomplete? Could the KGB have hidden a figure whose genius rivaled even that of the world's most celebrated physicist? Throughout history, the family of Albert Einstein has remained a source of both fascination and mystery. It is a known fact that Einstein had a sister, Maya Einstein, with whom he maintained a close relationship throughout his life. But lesser known is the story of his younger brother, Edward Einstein. Born in 1910, Edward showed immense intellectual promise from an early age. By the time he was a teenager, he demonstrated a profound interest in psychiatry, literature, and theoretical physics, much like his elder brother. His IQ was estimated to be over 150, a mind as sharp and curious as Albert's. However, tragedy struck early. Edward was diagnosed with schizophrenia in his early 20s, a condition that led to repeated hospitalizations and a life lived largely out of the public eye. The official records tell us that Edward spent the majority of his later years in a psychiatric hospital in Zurich, Switzerland, until his death in 1965. But recently uncovered documents suggest that this story might not be the whole truth. In 1991, following the collapse of the Soviet Union, thousands of previously classified documents from the KGB archives were made public. Among these were cryptic references to a figure identified only as E. Einstein, a scientific mind whose expertise was allegedly utilized in secret Soviet projects between 1948 and 1953. What's even more intriguing is that travel records from post-war Europe show a series of undocumented movements between Zurich and Moscow during precisely this time period. Passports issued under the name Edward E. list occupations related to scientific research and theoretical studies. Could Edward Einstein, long thought to be lost to illness, have been secretly recruited by Soviet intelligence? It wouldn't have been the first time. After World War II, the Soviet Union launched a series of covert operations known collectively as Operation Cold Science. Their aim was simple: to capture the minds of the West by any means necessary. Nazi scientists, Western physicists, and technological engineers were often coerced, enticed, or outright kidnapped to serve Soviet interests. Given Albert Einstein's outspoken political views and his opposition to fascism and militarism, it is not unreasonable to believe that his family members would have been targets for Soviet recruitment, willingly or otherwise. Among the documents was a particularly haunting report, a description of an experimental device allegedly designed under the supervision of E.E., swing that could manipulate quantum fields to transfer energy without loss, a concept that even today remains on the cutting edge of theoretical physics. Drawings recovered from Soviet archives show crude but fascinating sketches of what appear to be early models of zero-point energy generators. If genuine, these would predate modern quantum energy experiments by decades. If the Soviets had indeed possessed such technology, and if it had been developed under the guidance of a forgotten Einstein, the implications would have been staggering. But why would Edward have agreed to work for the Soviet Union? It is worth remembering that during his institutionalization, Edward became deeply disillusioned with the Western world. Letters from Edward to his father, letters that Albert Einstein later destroyed, contained harsh criticisms of capitalist society and the alienation of the modern man. Perhaps, in his vulnerable state, Edward found in the Soviet ideology a twisted form of hope. Or perhaps he had no choice at all. The KGB was notorious for coercion, blackmail, and psychological manipulation. A man suffering from mental illness would have been a perfect pawn, brilliant enough to create revolutionary devices, yet isolated enough to disappear without raising alarms. After 1953, the trail goes cold. There are no more mentions of E. Einstein, no records, no sightings, no communications. Officially, Edward Einstein died quietly in a Swiss hospital. But what if he didn't? What if his death was staged? A cover for a life lived in the shadows, advancing technologies we are only beginning to understand today. Albert Einstein himself remained a person of great interest to Soviet intelligence throughout his life. The FBI, too, kept close tabs on him, compiling over 1,400 pages of surveillance and investigation reports. It is not hard to imagine that his family would also have been scrutinized, manipulated, and perhaps exploited. Ultimately, history is written by those who have the power to preserve or destroy the record. And sometimes, the most brilliant stars burn not in the public eye, but in hidden laboratories behind iron curtains, under the watchful gaze of regimes that fear and covet genius in equal measure. Perhaps, somewhere in the long, cold corridors of forgotten archives, there still exists a file, a testimony to a man who might have outshone even Albert Einstein himself, a brother, a genius, a ghost. Until the truth emerges, all we can do is wonder, was Albert Einstein truly alone in his genius? Or was there another, lost to history, hidden by secrets too powerful to be revealed?